while I understand that thought that this is going to have to happen, no matter what, Punk is coming back, no matter what you think, it's really bad timing from a contract renewal point of view, because we found out this week that not only the Elite and Kenny Omega's contracts are up, Hangman Page, who was suspiciously different from Dynamite this week, his contract is up as well. Like, I mean, I think they'll all end up re-signing for AEW. But what a needle to have to thread for Tony Khan right now, JP. Like, you gotta, how'd you keep, whether we personally think everyone involved are being giant babies, which I think we do, I think that's our general point on all of it. Everyone needs to grow up. There is still the cold hard fact that Tony Khan's got to go in a room and explain to the Young Bucks why they should resign when this bloke, CM Punk, who they hate, coming back, explain to Kenny Omega, and also explain to Hangman Page, all within the same period. Like, it's still a risky game, even if it's a decision you have to make.
Massively risky game. I mean, the potential of losing the Elite from All Elite Wrestling. And I know we've spoken about the hiring freeze with WWE. You would have to believe you're making exceptions for the top stars in AEW. And that includes MJF as well. At the same
Cody,
time,
it's worth it in both ways, isn't it? Take one off them, give one to you.
And Hangman Page is long term the most valuable player out of those guys. Is what I personally believe. Like, booked correctly, he is like, because his wrestling has gone up such a notch as well. But I think he has to have the meeting. He has to have the conversation. They have to be able to thrash this out. And as EVPs, they have to look at this as, for business, this secures like the future of the company and allows them to grow and expand in ways backstage where perhaps you can create an infrastructure that'll be able to manage these kind of talent relation stuff and effectively move the EVPs more away from the EVP label, which I don't think helps them ultimately either. It's really difficult. I mean, like, you're kind of Jericho being in there in as part of it, and I'm sure that's he's trying to be the conduit in all of this, which is effectively the role that they've hired Jericho to do as well, haven't they? Like, to a degree, you see the role that he ends up taking is probably going to end up being like that kind of bloody Jim Ross role. Well, whatever you think of Chris Jericho and him being involved in all these various storylines as well, but yeah.
But I'd say on that though, like, is that like Chris Jericho? It's weird because Chris Jericho was in that position despite not being an EVP. Like, he was the smartest in the room because he didn't take the the sheriff's badge that the Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks got, and he seems to have walked out with a similar amount of power, which is wild. It'd be interesting to see in those contract renewals if the Elites and if Kenny and the Bucks come out of it still as EVPs, if that even means anything. Because I think the fact that Tony Khan seems to be leaning on Jericho and he's going to be one of the people in that room with Punk when it comes to the meeting tells you that those EVP badges are worth the money that they're printed on, which is not much.
But even if they're using this as leverage, which is they should do, if you imagine there would be WWE interest, then why wouldn't you do this series? Because effectively that would be a thing that would really boost your name. Like,
pay me more, I'll do it. Because what they're going to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when are their contracts up? This is where we don't have, these things aren't ever sort of like publicly available. We only know about them until they really kind of run out as well. But yeah, I mean, James says here in the chat, if I were the Elite, I wouldn't sign anything, do New Japan for 6 to 12 months. Like, it's very, very difficult because you could just see WWE just wanting them in. Like, if there's an opportunity to go for them, if there's an opportunity to hurt the competition, this is the thing of, pitch to Vince McMahon. He'll just lie to them about how they'll be used because he won't get them. And they'll run off the obvious kind of, the Usos and Bucks and, Kenny Reigns and whatever, and then I'll get bored with them.
Well, that was always the rumor, wasn't it? Remember when they did the whole Vince, Triple H, and Stephanie, and I don't remember if Shane was there, all got in the ring on Raw and was like, "We're going to start listening to the fans from now on." That was when they thought they'd sign Kenny and the Young Bucks. Like, genuinely, that's the story. That's where that meme that gets trotted out. Well, we're going to listen to you. Everything there's going to be change. That was supposed to be the change. So there was interest as far as back then. I don't know. I think if I was a betting man, I think no matter what, I just think the Young Bucks end up re-signing. I think Hangman Page probably does too. Kenny's more of a wild card. You never really know with Kenny. But I think in any event, to give this story balance, yes, bringing Punk back is the right thing. But the negative of bringing Punk back with these issues unsettled, with Punk unpunished, with it all still, completely murky and, just the bad feeling still being there, it does give those lads a little bit more power, and it gives them more pause, gives them more thought. And like you said, even if they don't really, mean it if they say to Tony, well, we could walk, well, we could go to AEW, it's a hell of a lot of leverage, and it's a hell of a. They're probably all going to make more money, like based off all of this as well. If it's going to be a case of Tony having to twist their arm to re-sign a company that's got
as they should, because they are also going to become going to have to be the cornerstones of Dynamite if you're doing like a split, a hard split. And apparently it's basically going to be Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite, isn't it? Which seems to be then setting up a kind of, Punk Jericho Appreciation Society on the other side on the Saturdays as well. But then they're going to get together for pay-per-views. There's going to be times when the taping schedules don't work, and they're going to be around, and they're fucking meant to be EVPs, and they're not going to be there at all of the shows. Like, I find that stuff, it's so vague. There's a lot of things they have to figure out.
But it ties into like this other story that's kind of was in the Observer today, where Meltzer stated that Punk hasn't actually apologized to the Young Bucks yet over the All Out fight. He said that obviously he hasn't made any attempt to make amends with him, but apparently people close to Punk are saying that he's been told not to have any contact with them.
Yeah.
And you could absolutely read anything into that if you like, because that could be as simple as Tony Khan has said, don't get in touch with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, but with CM Punk being fucking Joe Lawsuit these days, and every time fucking his food's a bit late from Uber Eats, he'll threaten to fucking sue the delivery driver at this point. That seems to be the world that Phil Brooks lives in these days. Would it shock you if there's legal reason why maybe they have to do all this? It might just be that they literally can't be in the same room together. Like they literally, there might be some kind of legal restraining order or legal settlement pending. Like that
mediation.
Just conjecture, but that might be the reason why the Bucks have to be on Wednesdays and Punk have to be on Saturdays. There might be legal elements to this as well as the hate feelings and the the pettier nonsense that we've been talking about this time.
Yeah, that they have a HR department. I mean, it all comes within the organisation of the sort of Jags and Fulham and all of this kind of stuff, which is the thing that really needs kind of shoring up. That if there's a HR department and this has happened, and there's going to be like mediation, there's going to be like, right, there has to be a series of accepted boundaries. This does make it easy. It's just not a solution to it. That's the thing with it. Like, and if you're told not to contact them, then you can't apologize. Like, the only time that can happen is if you're going into a room in there. And if Punk apologizes first up and says that, and then they have a kind of clear the air session where effectively they say, okay, just in order for the kind of good of the company, this is what we'll end up doing, and we'll just like kind of stay on separate paths for the moment and then see how that goes. I mean, yeah, it's a mess, but it does have to be sorted. You can't allow this to fester, because then you're into WCW territory, which we already have because Thunder's coming back. So, like, at that point, like, it is, and that's the thing that scares us. Like, from as founder of the read a fucking history book movement, like I like to think on this, you kind of look at it and it seems quite scary, because you've got dressing room turmoil, you've got the fact they're making money hand over fist. There are creative elements at play with this, which are things that can end up preventing the booking. and and at the same time, yeah, they've like in the middle of a war is what it is with WWE. Like, there's a lot of combustible elements within AEW as they prepare for some of the biggest shows in the company's existence.